So if you didn't get the flock note, that brief but brilliant homily should have told you that something was coming. All right, so it's nice to be back here with you after being away for a week. So this summer is a little bit unusual because the amount of travel that I have been doing and will be doing. So next week I'll be away for vacation, seeing my folks and brother and sister and their families. And the following week I'll be on my way to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for a conference on Catholic education. Last week I was making a cross-country architectural tour at the suggestion of our architect. So I began at Christendom College, which is about an hour and a half outside of D.C., and then I went to the cathedrals at Raleigh, North Carolina, and then Knoxville. And then I went to Thomas Aquinas College in California, which is up in the mountains, a beautiful place. Send your kids there. They'll take nice pictures and send you back. A good education. So he wanted me, I think, to see these places because they've all been recently constructed. So there's a big difference between, St. Peter's Basilica in Rome and what they had to account for, and what they didn't, like air conditioning, for example, and bathrooms and such. So he wanted me to see new construction, both to see what has been done well and what has not been done so well, so that we can learn from others' mistakes, which I certainly have learned quite a bit just over the past couple of weeks. On Tuesday, this last Tuesday, we had an event to express our gratitude to all those who made significant contributions to our capital campaign, Open Wide the Doors to Christ. For one reason or another, probably largely the pandemic, seems that maybe that was overlooked just a little bit, an expression of gratitude. So we wanted to do that, and one special way that we wanted to say thanks is by giving them a sneak peek of what I'm about to show you, the plans for the campus. So we did that on Tuesday. Now, if you remember, after we did the presentations on the direction that we plan to go, we did the exploratory committees, presentations, we threw out the idea of using St. Peter's in Rome as our point of reference, because everybody identifies John Paul II with St. Peter's. Right, and when I threw that out, I didn't hear one person say, no, bad idea, we shouldn't do that. Right, so what that allowed us to do is a couple things. One, it allowed our architects to set off at a fast pace. They've been working for us for under 3 months, and you'll see they have achieved an extraordinary level. So it allowed that, but it also allowed us to sidestep some of the pettiness that can come in projects like this. Like, I like this. I have a certain fondness for early Christian architecture, like the original St. Peter's, so I probably would have advocated for that. Last night, this was brought home to me, so I had a baptism. I went to the reception afterwards, and the great-grandparents were telling me about just a small improvement project in their church, which is in the Archdiocese, just working on the seating and windows on the back wall. And the great-grandma said, you would not believe the controversy that has erupted because of this. They put in clear glass first to wait for the stained glass. Now they have the stained glass in. Some prefer clear, some prefer stained glass, and oh man, back and forth. And I thought, I'm so glad we bypassed all of that. Right? So St. Peter's, I ran all these plans, at least what we had a few weeks ago, past some of our leadership, from Finance Council members to campaign, to a former building committee, to those who are involved in construction and education, just to make sure we're moving in the right direction. Everybody gave us 2 thumbs up, so we have proceeded with that. So significant reference points from St. Peter's in Rome. The first that I'll show you is just the footprint, the shape of the church itself, which is a cross, so it's a cruciform shape. And then St. Peter's has shrines or side altars down the side aisles. So this is the Pietà of Michelangelo in one of those altars or shrines. The most, I might say, significant or dramatic is the altar of sacrifice, which the importance of which is highlighted by the baldacchino, which is an elevated canopy that harkens back to the tent that covered the Ark of the Covenant as the Israelites journeyed through the desert. And those columns, kind of windy columns, harken back to the original temple in Jerusalem. So it draws upon that. And it's saying this is important. It's highlighting the importance here. And then, of course, the great dome of St. Peter's. Heaven participates with us, right? Okay, so those were the significant reference points, or are the significant reference points. So what you see here is the floor plan, the basic footprint of our proposed church, full size, once everything is done to it. It is cruciform in shape, so you can see the cross there. Now, one of the advantages is that it allows more people to have closer access or proximity to the altar. It's got shrines along the sides where we anticipate developing the story of John Paul II. Significant figures in his life, different saints in his life, like Maximilian Kolbe, for example, where we'd have located in one of those shrines. And then here, the entryway, you have kind of a graduated entry coming from what the church calls profane, the ordinary. Then you make this initial transition into this porch or portico, then to the narthex, then to the nave, and then closer and closer to the Holy of Holies. This itself draws upon the temple in Jerusalem, the old temple in Jerusalem, understanding that there needs to be this transition from the everyday to the extraordinary, the sacred, right, which is reflected, for example, in the vestments that the priest wears. This is out of the ordinary, or what the servers wear, or the vessels that we use that are not common, profane things that you would use in other ways. The same would be true with the elevated language or the difference in music between out there and in here. So there's the full footprint of the church. Now, the full church probably is a little bit beyond where we need to be in terms of populations. So the full size, we're still zeroing in on capacity, but it's between 900 and 1,000 seats. Okay, the first phase is around 500. Okay, just to put that into perspective, even though the sign out there says occupancy is at like 338 for this area, that means if people are standing up here in the pews, it's like 220. So you can see it's, essentially doubling. Right? The facade, the front would be simple, because eventually when you build the second phase, that would come off. The bathroom fixtures would be removed and then replaced when that full size church is completed. Now, there are other advantages to doing this, financial as well, because who knows, but we may not be able to build the whole church all at once, and there's a temptation for instant gratification. Like, I want everything, and so let's cut corners so that we can get the whole thing up. And, well, that's not without consequence. So this is the chapel that was recently dedicated at Christendom College. It's something to behold. It really is. It's in the Gothic style, kind of the Norman Gothic style with that square tower. Okay, it's very well done, and it was about a $30 million project. It seats about 500 to 550. They spent money in certain areas, like the roof that is slate, right? So it's bucos money. A feature of this Gothic style is cut stone. So you see the stone here, but that's not actually cut stone. Yeah, it's a synthetic material. So at $30 million, they couldn't afford cut stone. That would be unbelievably expensive. So one of the ways they cut corners is to use a material called ephes, which is synthetic. It's basically Elmer's glue, sand, and epoxy that you would see on buildings like Chipotle and 7-Eleven. You can make it look like cut stone, but not last like cut stone. It only has a lifespan of about 30 years. So you think, oh my gosh, what are you leaving for people down the road, right, to deal with? That's one of the benefits of saying, okay, what can we financially afford? But let's build this right. right? So the intention is to build with load-bearing masonry and brick so that the walls last 100 years, 100 plus years. The green on the top is to represent copper, like the roof of the state capitol that lasted 130, 140 years. Now, the brick is ochre brick. It's a little difficult, even though these are very good renderings, to see kind of what that would look in real life. So there's an example of real-life ochre brick, which works very well with the limestone appointments. Okay, so there's phase one. There's phase two with facade reminiscent of St. Peter's, as well as a little courtyards with a covered entrance for those who would park close, with mobility issues or limitations. And there's your dome. And then final stage would be the towers for the bells. All right, so you can do that as finances permit. So here's the front elevation. There's the simple facade I was telling you about in phase one. There's phase two, and then the dome, and then the towers. Pretty impressive, isn't it? Now, if you want the whole spiel on what I'm about to show you, we'll have something posted on our webpage later today from our architect's talk on Tuesday. So as a classical architect, classical architects could be characterized as collaborating with the design of nature. Okay, so they are integrating how God has fabricated the universe by taking in proportions that you would see, for example, in the human body, what the human ear can perceive, and the human voice, and then putting that into the design. Now, some might say, well, what's the importance of that, or maybe laugh at it, downplay it a little bit, but you don't know what you don't know until you figure out what you don't know, and then it's too late, and I'll show you that in just a moment. It's stunning. Okay. So interior, so it could begin this way financially, though. If we're in a place where we can add the ornamentation, we could go ahead and do that. There's the dome. There's the basic ornamentation, the molding, along with the pilasters, and then the color that comes in, and of course the baldacchino that you see here. Now, even with a rendering that's this good, you might say, all right, what does this look like in real life? So I was at the Shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe a few weeks ago, which is laid out in cruciform shape. The colors are very similar. I mean, the style is the same. So the style of St. Peter's is Baroque. Baroque seeks to bring heaven down to earth. So you're going to see lots of colors and ornamentation, angels, saints, etc. So this gives you a basic snapshot of the design, right? The style, and the colors to a degree are going to mirror this. This shrine is capable of seating like 500 people or 550, so that gives you an idea of what our ultimate church would be like. So you see the baldacchino, the transepts, those are the side arms, the overall look of this. It's beautiful, isn't it? Oh, it's so well done. It's amazing. So it was only built a few years ago. I'm not sure about how they suspended the cross. We're going to approach it a little bit differently, but then the dome. And they work such details, like you see the stars up there. So those are laid out as the constellations were when Our Lady of Guadalupe appeared to Juan Diego on the night. So, you can plot that in to a web page. You go back and you can see what the stars look like. And so they took that and worked that in. That's just one of the details. All right. So here's the proportions and such. Now, when they're absent, that's when you begin to notice it. So maybe not immediately. This is from the cathedral in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's an enormous structure, kind of breathtaking. You walk in, it's huge. Seats like 2,000 people. All right, so it's huge, not designed by a classical architect. And so it's like, I don't know if you ever had this experience where you feel something before you can actually articulate it, like something doesn't seem right. Well, let me show you just a couple of the things that aren't quite right. So what would you expect? When something is nearer to you, you would expect that that object is larger. And the farther away it gets, the smaller it would get, correct? So you look at this and think, all right, so it's got these windows here that are the medium height in this overall layout. These are the smallest, and that's actually borrowed from another style of architecture. And then you have the largest ones at the very top, which we think they designed as they did because they had access to a few stained glass windows that were that size. So what do you have? You have this unusual experience of medium, small, large, which is not what you would see ordinarily, correct? But then also there's this. You see the aisle, long aisle, it's directing your attention to the place of greatest importance. But the place of greatest importance, wow, it seems dramatically undersized, small, doesn't it? It's like, all right, there's more to this than what we might think to the details. Details come out in a ripple effect. So there was another place that I visited, rather recently constructed. It was designed by a classical architect and then turned over to an architect of record who doesn't have the same background. And then the influence came in. Here's an efficient way that we can use space in the sanctuary. Let's elevate the sanctuary, put the HVC under it, and you'll be good to go. But they had worked into the sanctuary an altar rail, communion rail, which is an extension meant to be of the altar table. So you come forward and you eat at the table. But now, by doing that without any idea of what that's actually about, they've elevated the altar rail so that it's head height. So you come to it, and it's no longer an altar rail from which to eat, but it's a fence that keeps you away. I mean, that's just what it is. Another thing, same instance, where they had designed the church proportionally accurate, but then decided to put HVAC and other stuff in the ceiling. So they did a drop ceiling, put the stuff in there. Now you've got the width that was planned for a ceiling that's much greater height, and it feels squished. You know, a little bit like this, but not quite. But then it throws off the acoustics because it was designed with that height in mind. Now they're spending over $1 million just to try to compensate for the acoustics. Does that make sense to you? Yeah, so classical architecture seeks to work with the design that God has instilled in nature. Kind of the modern approach is triumph over nature. I think, therefore I am. I will do it, right? I'll make it happen. Okay, quickly now. Here's the first phase of the academy. First phase, first floor. You walk in, on the right side is the church offices, parish offices. On the left would be the school offices. Then you've got some flex space for parish meetings, conference rooms, gatherings, etc. You have kindergarten over on the left, and then you have 2 CGS rooms for the afternoon and evening, but that will be used as pre-K during the day. And then the second floor, you've got the remaining classrooms along with the cafeteria / the parish hall, so we have coffee and donuts over there. It's laid out very efficiently, and you'll see here, so the first phase is grayed out so that you see the second phase, which includes a second number of classrooms, so 2 classrooms per grade have been added along with the full cafeteria and the gym. And then, of course, it creates a courtyard. And part of the beauty of this approach is that it's not a double bank hallway. So you don't have classrooms on both sides, but you have it on one side, which allows natural light to come in to the hallways, to the rooms. Here are the renderings. Phase 1, Phase 2, front facade, and then with the church in view. And here again, we're being taught something. This building, even if we didn't know it was a church, we know this is of greater importance because the height. But then also, as we learn to read the architecture, we see that the capitals, the tops of these columns here, are less ornate than these. So it's telling us, look, this is more significant. This building here is. Okay, here's the first floor of the parish hall. So eventually, when that's built, then parish offices will move over there. People have expressed interest about having like a informal place to gather, like we called it cafe/lounge, so you can have your little book groups and stuff meeting there. Sorry, I didn't include the second floor, but there's the second floor meeting spaces and such. There's the front facade. And from the side. So they complement each other. There's order, as you can see, design, which is characteristic of this approach. And from the front. Okay, and for those who are interested, this is the footprint layout for the rectory. So they asked me, what do you want for the rectory? And I said, you know what? I went to a rectory in Texas before I was even a seminarian. And I thought it was laid out really well, so I kind of sketched it out, and they took it from there. And what you see is, okay, double-car garage. So you have priest 1 who goes to this side, priest 2 that goes to this side, and they go immediately into their private suite, bedroom, bathroom, sitting room, and then they come out, and there's a common area, right? Kitchen, living room, etc. And then there are the elevations for that little place. So here is the whole campus phased in, and it could be phased in different ways. There you go. What do you think? It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, it suggests there's something unique going on here. It does. Good. So, I guess that's it. Oh, there's something else. What am I forgetting? Yes, thanks be to God, we got the land. Yes. We got the land. It almost didn't happen, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. So, to explain how to get there is a little complicated, so follow me. So we're facing, you go out the doors, you're facing east, right? And if you turn not 45 degrees even, you'll see a barn over there, and then you'll see a sign that says Grata. That next week will say St. John Paul II. Yeah. So there's drawn out for you. The circle is this building right here. The blue is the land. That's over 37 acres of land. You can see what a difference you can do with a campus when you have adequate land, right? The layout that it allows. Now, the complications, well, here, while I'm talking, just because some people walked out last night and said, where's the land? Where's it at? And I said, well, okay, let me just do this for you so you can see precisely where it's at. Right, so it's 37 acres. As a point of reference, our land at 167th and Ridgeview has about 14 buildable acres on it. Okay, now I think I show you when I turn around here. Part of the problem that we ran into once we got to the city is that this land was platted for a residential housing, which the section just across the street and to the north of this depended on for an entrance that allowed them to build the number of houses that they have. By fire code, they had to have that entrance, which initially meant for us, we were on to pay for public roads on our land at $1,000 a linear foot, which made it seem undoable, right? And so we wrote a letter of intent on another piece of land just as a contingency plan because it looked like this could fall through at the last minute. But we were able to work it out. And what you see here, campus on the left side, platting out of land on the right for future homes. We're going to take about 23 acres of that land, put it into perspective, that's about 8 football fields more than what we currently have at 167th. Okay? So we're going to take about 23 acres. we've got this worked out. The city, and even more remarkably, and just as another indication of God at work, we currently have contract negotiations going on both for this eastern portion of that land and for our land at 167th. The combined total of which should come close to $1.5 million. Yeah, you heard me right. Pick up the jaw. So you think of that, along with the decreased site cost, because this is much flatter, more amenable to what we're doing, and you see what a smart investment this was. Now I want to share with you, kind of just in closing, how grateful, of course, we are to this family who's really got behind this. They're donating the money to purchase the land, but I will tell you, never once did they say, we think this project should be done first, or we want this style, or we want that. None of it. It was always, what is best for the parish? That's what we want you to do. It's extraordinary. Yes. Say a prayer for them, if you would, in gratitude, and let them inspire you. I'm letting them inspire me. Remember the gospel. Nothing is too insignificant. A cup of cold water merits a reward in eternity. Nothing is too insignificant, and no one is without responsibility or opportunity. So here we are. There's what the future can look like and will look like with all of us. Are you ready? Yes? Yeah, to build it? Yes. Good. Good. So we've hired a third-party cost estimator so that we get really good costs as we step forward. That event on Tuesday kind of wrapped up the campaign, Open Wide the Doors to Christ. If you still have pledges, please pay those. But that wrapped up that campaign so that we can launch another one beginning in September. Okay, so between now and then, we will certainly continue to communicate. If you have feedback or anything, you can use that email, projects@jp2kc.org. Thank you for your attention and participation and excitement. It's exciting. Yeah.